Hello and welcome back to my craft room. I'm going to do things a little bit differently today. I've been catching up on another online art class, so I filmed the process, but what I've decided to do is try the other way around this time. I'm going to show you how it turned out first, and then I'm going to show you a speeded up process and perhaps do a bit of a voiceover as I go along. So this is what I've ended up with. And it was inspired by a class on Let's Face It 2021. This one was with Deb. Now, I don't know if I'm going to say her name right. Deb Weiers, W-E-I-E-R-S. Weiers. Anyway, I will leave a link to her below. Unusually for me, mine has turned out very like the original inspiration piece. So this was Deb's piece and this was mine. I usually go a bit more of my own way, but maybe it's just because I loved it so much and it was so different for me, I followed it more closely than I would usually. I don't know. Anyway, I'm really happy with how it turned out. So without further waffling on, I'm going to go straight into the process. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoy. Bye. Okay, so I've got Deb's original piece near to me for inspiration, also the copious notes I made whilst watching the lesson. I'm working on hot pressed watercolour paper and I've got 3 kinds of charcoal and a couple of different types of erasers. I'm starting off by scribbling wildly with my charcoal pencil, then filling in some patches with the vine charcoal, the willow charcoal, and some denser patches with compressed charcoal, rubbing all over with my manky rag, and then erasing some lines. Now getting out the acrylic inks. 3 colours to start with, a big pot of water and some wide brushes. I've got a yellow ochre, an orange and a turquoise blue. Starting off just splashing on some random puddles of water and then dripping the acrylic ink into those puddles. Starting with the orange and then the yellow ochre. Bit more orange and a tiny bit much less of the turquoise blue, and just watching those do their thing, which is great. Bit more water, spreading the colour around a bit and allowing them to mix. Really enjoyed this part. Also scribbling there into the work with the wrong end of the paintbrush to leave some lines. Just flicking through, picking out some eyes cut from magazines and some bits of collage paper. I'll choose which I actually use later on. So this is all dry now. I've got some acrylic paint and I'm going to try and mix up a light mint green colour, which will be swiped onto the paper with a credit card. Need a bit more. Oops! Put cadmium red instead of white acrylic paint there. Anyway, finally mixed up the minty green that I wanted and swiped it on there fairly randomly. Drip some water on to make it look more interesting, let it run down the page a little bit, and then I'm deciding which eye to use. Decided to go for the big one and I'm gluing it into place with Pritt Stick there. So really my whole face now will kind of grow around that eye. Now I'm going in with my Zig Millennium marker, quite a fine liner, and scribbling in a little eye for the other side, and I'm tearing out black paper, thick black paper, to create some eyebrows for the face and gluing them into place with Pritt Stick as well. Now this is a white gesso, so I'm just sort of filling in the whites of the eyes. This won't dry up so white. You don't really want the whites of the eyes to be bright white anyway, except for they're highlighted. And I'm also using the acrylic gesso to start picking out the background, to start sort of deciding where the outline, rather wonky outline of this face is going to be, based on the scribbled lines that I created earlier on. And they don't stay like that, they do change as I go along, but it's a starting point really. Sketching in a nose with the charcoal and then filling that in with some of the white gesso. And now I've got deep madder and cadmium red acrylic paints there, and I've mixed them together with a bit of white and swiped them across with a credit card again to create the beginnings of the lips. This is transparent gesso, and I'm just putting that over the top of the collage pieces, and I think that went over the top of the lips as well, just to enable me to work over them again, because acrylic paint can be a bit shiny. Now I'm using the white gesso again to just kind of define some of the shapes in the face a little bit more and start to create a bit more contrast. Added some pink to the nose there, and just some lighter highlights to the bottom lip, leaving the top one darker. I wasn't quite happy with the shape of the lips here, so I'm just sort of doctoring that a little bit. Back to the nose again, there's a lot of backing and forth in here. Now I did some pink up to the sort of cheek area there, and a bit more of that lovely yellow ochre. This is a brush pen with kind of water reactive ink in it, so I could draw the line on and then use a little water brush to just blend the ink out. A bit more of the yellow here to brighten things up a bit. I think that's the orange, so I'm just filling in some of the areas that the scribble lines created with the colours, and some of the turquoise there with some at the bottom to balance it out, and I think there'll be a third, yes, because I like threes. And now more of the yellow. So those two together do make a really nice green, which doesn't show up too well there actually, but all through this there's a lot of back and forthing between areas on the face and different colours and light and dark. A bit more pink on that nose, and then a highlight. And now just adding some more detail to the eye and the other eye. So in the end it doesn't look like that one was cut out of a magazine really. That was just my starting point. I enjoyed doing all these scribbly lines around all the features. And then back in with the water brush again to blend some of that ink out. Deepen the shadows. And the same on the other side. Make it a bit more of a dramatic contrast. Adding more highlight to the nose here and to the lips and along that top of the lip, and just starting to add highlights to the eyes and try and think about, although they're very different, they're wonky eyes, very different from each other, one's higher, one's lower, they're different colours, but the light would hit them in the same way, so I'm trying to even up those highlights a little bit. And then adding more darkness to that upper lid. And now going in with more of the brighter colours. Adding some of that amber kind of colour to the eyes as well. I love to cut that colour in the eyes. A little touch of pink to the nose, and then that lovely light pink along the top eyelid and the bottom lid as well, to start to bring the eyes to life a bit. I could twiddle like this for hours. The bare bones of it are there, it's just messing about now, which is the fun part. Doing a bit of mark making while I've got that colour on the brush, and adding a nice big highlight to the chin. And now this collage piece that I found that looks so like the one that Deb used, I couldn't resist using it. It was just lying there at the top of my collage paper drawer. It was meant to be. Now some more of that lovely bright yellow ochre. They call it yellow ochre, but to me it's too bright to be yellow ochre. I love it. I love that colour. It's more of a amber yellow. Adding some of the light minty green, dotted here and there. And now another layer of shadow to those eye sockets. This ink definitely dries up quite a bit lighter than it looks when it first goes on, so I just kept layering it until I was happy with it, really. Squirting it with the water bottle and dabbing it with my cloth from time to time. And I'm beginning to think about adding the black to the background. So where the white gesso was, that's all going to end up being black. And I've also added some shadow under the bottom lip, where it would be if this was a real face. Be a bit strange if it was a real face, wouldn't it? So that black in the background really sets everything off. And you can see that as I go along, I'm sort of chopping and changing my mind about where the outline's going to be. So I'm using those initial scribbly lines as a guide, but also if they don't suit me, I'm just making it up. Okay, I'm starting to add little kind of holes inside the edges, if that makes sense, which I can doodle around later on. And while I'm there, I'm doing some little marks with the black paint as well. Those circles I've just made now, I'm going to, when I paint the background in, I'm going to leave those as they are to break up that background a little bit. I've just decided to add some red dots, the same colour as the lips there, and then some little dots of that light minty kind of bluey green. And now I've got my black acrylic ink again, and I'm just filling in some more of that background, filling in carefully around those shapes. Moved on to a bigger brush now, so it all goes a bit quicker to get that background filled in. I love how that makes all the colours pop. And now I've got my Doodly pen out, and I'm just scribbling some lines around some of those areas, the chin, the nose, some of the original scribble lines, the lips, and always scribbled over every line at least twice or 3 times. I've got a black Sharpie now, I think that is, because I decided I needed a bit of a thicker line, so it's one of those fine, ultra fine Sharpies, but it's still a 0.7. So while I've got that in my hand, I'm giving a bit more definition to the eyes as well. Scribbling lines around the eyes. Something very liberating about just scribbling all over your picture. Now doodling around some of those shapes that I've already made. And I'm writing some words, not the same words that Deb wrote. I think I've got explore, play, let go. Should I put one more? Enjoy. I've got my white Posca paint pen out now, adding some eyelashes, getting those highlights in the eyes to really pop. More scribbly lines. And just picking up some of those lines around the nose and mouth as well. Helps to bring it all to life a little bit. And then I'm also scribbling around those sort of abstract shapes that go off the face and into the background to sort of help tie it all together. Once I get doodling, it's very hard to know when to stop. I'm filling in some of the open areas of the letters as well. Doodling lines around all those those original scribble shapes. Back to the eyes again. As I say, a lot of back and forthing in this. Back onto the lips. Added some more just random dots, more colouring of letters. It really is back and forth, back and forth. And just coming to a point where I realise it's time to stop. Well, I really enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed watching. Thanks ever so much for joining me today, and I will see you again really soon with another project. Cheerio!